Hi, this is Jacqueline here with the Grow Program. Thank you for tuning in. This is your Sunday morning service with a little twist. This is a brand new church and you don't have to pay no tithes. Praise God. Okay, thank you for tuning in here, and I want to thank my listeners over in France and, different places around the world, Germany, Russia. I thank you for tuning in. I thank you for your support. France, especially you guys, you have a very nice president over there, and Emmanuel Macron. And I know that he came over here and he really tried to work with our president, Donald Trump. A lot of people try to work with him. But that's why, people shouldn't get upset with Ice Cube and what he's trying to do. Anybody, we got to work with these leaders. We have to. Don't you remember the picture of Dr. King, standing up there with Lyndon Johnson and standing there with John Kennedy? We have to work with these people, whether we have differences with them or not. These are perceived differences. See what's going on. You got to educate yourself. You can't just take one side. Like I tell folks, you can't just take one side. You got to educate yourself, about everything, especially before you vote. You got to know what this person represent, what they stand for. Yes, we got this coronavirus that came in here and a lot of people died. And, that's very unfortunate that happened. That was, it could have been handled better. We can debate about that all day long. Yes, it could have been handled better. All those people didn't have to die, but, we got to work with these people. We need change in the community, and you can grow everywhere. That's what I'm telling folks. If you over there, wherever you at, cause I'm only one person. I'm trying to keep up with what's going on over here in the United States, but whatever, you can grow everywhere. If you got stuff going on in France, start talking with your leader. That man looked like he could talk and work with anybody. He seemed like he's a very nice, from the way can detect his spirit. I ain't never met the man, but he seemed like a very nice person, Mr. Macron. He seemed like he's willing to work. If y'all got problems over there, you need to start writing, start, being a voice like I am, start making change. Change starts with you. I heard somebody say this a long time ago. He said, if you want some things to change, start with yourself. Begin with you. I didn't want to hear that. I thought it was him. I thought he was the problem. He was the reason I was doing that this and that was going on. I went over there and I talked to my elderly neighbor. She told me, she said, when I got done talking to her, and you see I can talk. When I got done talking to her, she said, honey, sometimes you just got to know when to be quiet. I said, be quiet? I didn't know what she was talking about. I didn't know what she meant. So, I went back over there and I running my mouth at him again. Pretty soon I ran him off. He left. That was my first husband. He couldn't take my mouth no more because I was running my mouth at him in the wrong way. So that's why women and men in a relationship, if you got problems, you need to look at yourself, examine you, start with you. Because then I started on in this marriage that I'm in running my mouth. And I almost ran this one off. But the Lord had to sit me down in a quiet place, in a haunted house of all places. I done dealt with spirits all my life, but in a haunted house, to come in here and learn how to be quiet. I'm sitting here and we done came in from the store. I'm going to tell you something. This going to help somebody. This right here finna help somebody. We coming in from the store. We putting away the groceries. And, well, actually, we coming in from the store. He putting away the groceries. My daughter went upstairs. Her room said she had a headache. That was her way of getting out of it. And I came in to use the bathroom. I was coming out to help him. When I come back, by the time I get out, come back out, he done, going back and forth so fast, he done put everything up. So he get to arguing about that. And then, my stomach started hurting, because I was getting ready to go with him. And all of a sudden, my stomach started hurting. This happened about 3 months ago, people. This is when the Grow program really got going. When I realized that I've been called. I thought I was called before to preach, but I realized I really been called. And I've been having so much confirmation. All is going to come out. we gonna get into all of that, everything. But my stomach started hurting, and I went outside. I fell to the floor when my stomach started hurting, because the first word I said out of my mouth to say to him, I fell to the floor. Looked like somebody was cutting me with a butcher knife. So I got outside, and I'm doubled over in pain. And then I go back in the house to tell him that I'm still in pain. I don't know what's wrong with me. He told me to call the ambulance because he's still mad. So I go back outside, and all of a sudden, the pain stopped. And I heard a voice tell me, be quiet. Listen to me. Listen to me. I want you to go back in there and sit down on that couch and don't say nothing. And I'm thinking, don't say nothing. I'm thinking this. I ain't talking to nobody. Anytime I'm over here meditating to the spirits, I'm meditating in my mind. I ain't talking to nobody. So you ain't gonna see me sitting here talking and ain't nobody sitting here. I talk to the spirits in my mind. So then she tell me, go back in the house and sit down and don't say nothing. So he said something else. I didn't say nothing. He said something else. He trying to get me going. I didn't say nothing. Then he flipped over on the couch and went to sleep. That's when I began to learn how to be quiet, how to listen, how to meditate, and that's how I began to transform and become the woman that I am. My husband and I no longer argue. See, because I was a big part of that problem. We don't go through like we used to go through. We have a beautiful marriage. We like best friends. We act like we done been married for 40, 50 years. It's beautiful. Everything in my life done fell in place. And then once everything fell in place, they put on my spirit the grow movement to tell everybody else to come out of oppression. No matter where you at. If you in France, if you in Germany, if you in North Pole to South Pole, you can grow. No matter where you at. You just got to start with you. However way you oppressing yourself. If you putting alcohol in your body, however way you oppressing yourself, you need to come out of it. You don't have to do that anymore. And you done heard this message. So when you leave the spirits, you're going to be account of. And that's another thing I want to tell you about. I want to talk about the tormented souls. Being in a haunted house, that's what's going on here. There are tormented souls in this house. Evil people. This house is over 100 years old. This house was built back way before I was even thought of, back in the 20s. And slavery and all that was going on. They don't want us in here. We black people. They don't want us in this house. And so I had to go through some things. I had to really let this spirit in here know I don't want to be here either. But I'm here temporarily. And once I leave, you can have your house. So there's an evil realm and there's a spiritual realm. There's a good realm. And then they all in the spiritual realm is what I'm trying to tell you. But you don't want to be a tormented soul. You need to change your ways. You need to come out of whatever you're doing. If you're oppressing somebody or if you are oppressing yourself, it needs to stop. It needs to end, because it wasn't going on in Africa when the Europeans discovered us in the 1500s. The Europeans didn't even know Africans was over there. They went over there looking for gold and riches, all the stuff that was being traded, through the Swahili from the kings. So you're a descendant of kings and queens. But you ain't been acting like it. And the ancestors are not pleased. They're not pleased at all. They wasn't pleased with me. I had to do a lot of forgiving and forgiving myself and asking for forgiveness. I had to come through a complete transformation. And that's what you have to do. I can't tell you. I can tell you what they're telling me, but you have to examine your heart and your mind, because I'm going to tell you something. There's some soul catchers waiting in the spiritual realm. They're going to catch them ones who have been oppressing people and who are oppressing themselves. You don't want to be a tormented soul. That's why I'm telling you, it's time to change your life. Let's get right, people. Let's grow. You can grow from everywhere. God bless you.